Well, ladies and gentlemen, young people, and distinguished guests, the word that comes to mind is friendship and collaboration. I've got to thank Terry Clark. Our relationship and friendship goes back some 35 years. And when he called me and said, "Tony, I've got an idea for you," Terry's idea is always creative, hence the great collaboration and friendship with the University of South Australia and the International Space University. And to encourage them to come to our South Australian Italian Association, Italian Centre, is a delight for us. And it is a delight to welcome each and every one of you. And I hope that you will find as much value in what the collaboration has brought about as I'm feeling right now. It's a great, for me, as a merely just a representative of a team of people that got together and decided to support the idea of bringing and supporting the Paolo Nespoli Adelaide visit to fruition. Unfortunately, as you will find out in a minute, Paolo's flight has been delayed and he's not here, but he is here in spirit, and with modern technology you'll get a message from him as well. So without further ado, on behalf of the entire Italian community, the Nava Group, the Nespoli Adelaide Visit Assistance Group, I want to welcome you all here, and I'll hand over now to my great new friend, Scott Maidry.
Grazie. Good evening, everybody. The Honorable Grace Portalisi, Minister of Education, the Honorable Stephen Marshall, Deputy Leader of the Opposition, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, in welcoming you today, I acknowledge that we are on Ghana land and that we pay our respects to their living culture. Good evening, everyone. My name is Scott Maidry. I have the great pleasure of being the Program Director of the International Space University's Southern Hemisphere Summer Space Program, which is now in our third program here in your beautiful city of Adelaide. Our program is a true collaboration between the International Space University and the University of South Australia, UniSA. As I said, this is our third program. I'm very pleased to be here, and you'll notice on the first several rows are our students from 11 countries. And guys, I'll embarrass you a little bit. Stand up and let everybody see the students. So this is a big event for us every year, our annual Astronaut panel. It's obviously one of our public events, an opportunity for us to try to give something back to the local community, and we're very happy that all of you folks have shown up. Our students have to be here, but you guys chose to be here, and so we're very grateful to you. It's a very special event tonight. We have, I guess, 2.5 astronauts with us. Sadly, Paolo Nespoli of the European Space Agency, his flight left Los Angeles yesterday, got as far as Hawaii, had a mechanical situation and had to fly back to LA. He is right now in the air, hopefully past Hawaii at this point, and will be arriving tomorrow for his activity with our students. But we've done the very best we could in that this afternoon we had a video Skype conference with him, And so it will be slightly unusual, but I will go ahead and introduce him to you, and hopefully at 38,000 feet he'll feel some good vibrations. And we have a short video from him, and then this afternoon in our building over at UniSA in Mawson Lakes, I did a short little interview with him where he will actually speak to you. So I'll introduce Paolo Nespoli. He is a native and a resident of Milan, Italy. He received a bachelor's and master's degree in aeronautics and astronautics. He's a distinguished and highly skilled person, an engineer, pilot, scuba diver, master parachutist, parachute instructor, high altitude, low altitude parachutist, special forces operator with the Italian military. He joined ESA in 1991 as a trainer, an astronaut training engineer. In July of 1998, he was selected for the ESA Astronaut Corps, where he then completed his initial astronaut training in Houston, Texas, or far western Italy, as we call it. In June 2006, he was assigned to a space shuttle mission STS-120, and then in November of 2008, he was assigned to his second space flight, Expedition 2627, a long-duration mission to the International Space Station, which was launched in December of 2010. He spent 159 days in space, returning in May of 2011, and he's currently performing a variety of post-space flight activities. This is not Paolo, by the way. This is Mark of our staff, who will load up the video. We're good, but we're not that good.
I'm Paolo Nespoli, an astronaut from the European Space Agency. This December, I will be flying to the International Space Station, the space laboratory orbiting 400 kilometers above Earth, where with 5 other crew members, 2 Americans and 3 Russians, I will spend 6 months in space. Doing what, I imagine you are asking? Well, I will have a lot of onboard technical tasks to maintain the station in good working condition, and of course I will be involved in an intensive scientific program with experiments ranging from physiology and physics to medicine and biology. Last but not least, I will be doing many projects involving educational activities. Will I get bored? You bet I will not. To start, the view from up there is just magnificent, and I will try to see and photograph as many corners of Earth as I can. Then I will put aside a bit of time to answer your questions that you will post right here on ESA's YouTube channel. So join me on this exciting mission and fire your questions away. We will meet each other in space.
So this afternoon, while Paolo is actually visiting SpaceX's headquarters in Hawthorne, California, all you space people know who SpaceX is, we took the opportunity while he was in the middle of doing a simulation with the Dragon capsule at SpaceX to do a little short, brief interview with him directly for you. So please, he's speaking directly to you tonight.
Hello everybody down there, this is Paolo Nespoli speaking, still up here unfortunately. I was supposed to fly last night, there was a problem with the aircraft, and after 6 hour flight, we came back again to Los Angeles. I'm sorry, I would have really have loved being there with you tonight. But sometimes things don't work out the way we plan. Though the day was not lost, I took the opportunity to come and visit SpaceX. Very nice facility, a lot of things happening here. So really excited that commercial entities start working and going in space, and everything is good. I would like to start by thanking the university, the International Space University, for having requested ESA to let me come there with you, along with the University of South Australia, and a big thanks to the Italian community, to the NEVA organization set up by Tony Simeone. They are doing a lot of work, and I'm really looking forward to come and seeing you. Grazie anche a voi, grazie Tony, grazie a tutti per avermi dato questa opportunità. Spero di essere con voi il prima possibile e di passare tempo con voi e divertirmi. So, here I am in electronic format. I think we will have the opportunity to exchange a few thoughts and answer questions. I'm ready for your questions.
That's great. Hi, Paolo. This is Scott Madry from ISU, the moderator of the panel. We're so happy to have you with us virtually and look forward to having you in person. I have just a couple of things I was thinking I wanted to ask you. First of all, tell me what kind of activities are you directly involved in now in your work at ESA?
Well, I came back from a long-duration space flight a year and a half ago. I've been busy in returning to normal life, and what I've been doing in the last year actually is to go to several places and talk to universities, to schools, to general public, and talk about space and what it means going to space, the nice and educational part of this, but also the science part and the technological part. So I've been really busy. I've done a lot of presentation around the world, most of it in Italy, of course, but a lot of presentation. I think this is very important because when people really listen to you and understand what we are doing, they are very supportive, and we need to do this. I'm ready to continue with my task and job as an astronaut. I have also technical tasks that I'm carrying, I'm doing for the European Astronaut Corps, and so I'm looking forward to keep working for space, and God knows, maybe even going to space again.
Well, we certainly hope so. You mentioned education, and this is very important for us. Obviously, as a space university, could you perhaps mention how you see the role of education, of finding ways to inspire and get young people to be interested in science and technical and engineering fields so that we can build the next generation of the space workforce?
Well, I read somewhere that during the 60s and 70s in the United States, because of the fact that NASA was going to the moon, in the United States there were 1 million more people working in the technological fields that would have been if the Americans would not have gone to the moon. I think this is very important. It's very important for a society that part of the society concentrates and takes care of technology or of doing basic research or doing this kind of scientific activities. It's a little bit of a pity that today our media tend to put glamour on figures like singers, actors, basketball player, or I don't know, in Australia probably cricket players, and do not focus on people that do job in labs and at the end carry out a very exciting life. So showing to people that yes, it's exciting going in space, but it's also exciting working for space as a scientist, as a technician, as a designer, as an engineer, as a physicist. There is a wide range of technical activities that somebody can do in space. This is, I think, very important. And I find that every time that I talk about this with people really look at me with open eyes, and I see this little sparkle, this little twinkle in their eyes, and I think we gave them hope. Hope that they can do an interesting life in the future and be rewarded for what they really like to do, if it is in the scientific field.
Oh, that's a great response. You're one of the people who have been fortunate enough to actually get to fly in space, to get to do a long-duration mission. I'm sure it's very hard, but can you mention one event or thought or time that had the most impact on you when you were up in space? And is there one moment that crystallized that experience for you?
Well, it's actually interesting because there are a lot of moments, a lot of things that are special. I mean, going to space is really special. The departure, all the things that happen every time. But I think, strangely enough, one of the things that makes it really strange and difficult, it was that, for example, my mother died while I was in space, and this was a very strange moment. I mean, people query me about this many times, and I tell them that there's not a good moment for one of your parents to die and you're not there, or you could be there. It doesn't really matter. It's not a good moment. It forces you to think about life, to think about what you have done, what you're going to do, what is your mark. And I was up there when this happened, and I saw from one side a lot of people getting clue. Trying to protect me, trying to protect my family, my mother, my brother and sister back on Earth, and also I felt I was still doing something important. I was still doing something that was important for all of us. Nevertheless, this situation. So I think. I've been blessed in many ways. I was able to do what I wanted to do as a kid going to space. This is not easy, not because people cannot do it, but because statistically speaking, it's extremely complicated, and you never know why somebody can do it and some other people cannot. There is no real good reason. At least today is like that. So I think. The bottom line is that it's very difficult to isolate a single moment. I think maybe this one was the strongest moment for me, but of course I enjoyed every single day I was up there, and it's really a beautiful place to be.
So tell me, where do you think human spaceflight is going? We have many changes, the retirement of shuttle. Where do you think human spaceflight is heading?
Well, I've learned one thing, that in this business, it's very difficult to predict the future. I mean, I've seen things happening where they were not supposed to happen, and things not happening where they were not supposed to happen. I know one thing. I know that we have this engine inside us as humans that makes us not being able to refrain from exploring, not being able to be satisfied with what we know. So if we look at this and we look at it with the eyes of history, we have seen that this has been a very powerful engine that made us risk our lives to go and find out things that maybe seem to be trivial or not necessary or whatever. And then some of them turn out to be vital, turn out to be the key that change a culture, a nation. So to me, maybe this year, next year, and the next 10 years, so we might have problems, maybe yes, maybe not, but it's unavoidable that we will continue the exploration of our solar system. It's unavoidable that we will go to Mars. It's unavoidable that we will go even further. When? I don't know, but I'm sure we will.
Well, that's fantastic. So, Paolo, thank you so very much for joining us. We look forward to having you here in person. I know everyone here is very interested by your comments, and I would just like to say grazie mille.
Grazie, Scott. Thank again to you. Thank you for your patience and flexibility. Thank you again to the International Space University, to the University of Southern Australia, and of course to the Italian community, to Neva. Looking forward to be there and be with you and share a little bit the summer. Here it's winter, and see I have a coat and everything, and I look at you, and I'm looking forward to enjoy your culture, your flavors, and your sun.
Okay. Ciao.
Ciao. Salute a tutti. Arrivederci, a presto.
Okay, well, I hope you enjoyed our almost visit with Paolo. Our second speaker tonight is someone very special to us at ISU. Dr. Soyeon Yi is the first astronaut from Korea. She received a bachelor's and master's in mechanical engineering and a PhD. Get this for a topic: DNA separation chips using temporally asymmetric ratchet effects in non-uniform electric fields. Something you can all talk to her about later. She was one of 36,000 applicants to be the first astronaut from Korea. In December of 2006, she was selected as one of the 2 finalists. She spent a year training in Russia at the Yuri Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center. And on 8 April 2008, she launched into space on board Soyuz TMA-12 with 2 Russian colleagues. She spent 10 days on the International Space Station. Since her flight, she's worked as a senior researcher at KARI, as well as acting as Korea's space ambassador. And as someone who simply cannot stop, she's currently attending the Haas School of Business at the University of California, Berkeley, where she will receive her MBA with an emphasis on technology and social impacts in 2014. She's a graduate of the International Space University, a lecturer of ours, and just a wonderful person. So please welcome Dr. Soyeon Yi.
Hello everyone. Most of all, I'm so glad to be here with you, and then thank you for inviting me here as a panelist of the astronaut panel. Before starting my talk, and then I always show one movie clip to the audience, so it's the same, and then let's watch this video first. Fly me to the moon and let me play among these stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold The reason why I always show this video clip is I just want to tell everybody life in space is not that much different from your own life, because it was the last day of my flight. I had 11 days staying in the space station, and we had some kind of farewell party because it was last night of mine, and also 2 other crews will go down to the Earth. And then we had a good dinner and then talk about our life, and then finally they told me maybe it is the last chance to sing in a space station because before having my flight, I had several interviews, and then somebody asked me, what you really want to do in space? So I told them I want to sing in space because I love singing. Yeah, in the university, actually, I was in a band as a vocalist also. So singing is really part of my life. So I want to do that in space also. And then I want to apologize to the ISC students right now because whether they like it or not, they should listen more than 3 times. Anyway, yeah, it's almost same. We talk, we're eating, and then we prepare some coffee after dinner, and then we even eat some ketchup or some nut. It's very similar with your life, but in some point it's different, yeah. Even though I'm not a Chinese master like Jackie Chan, I could do this kind of meditation in space only because of the geogravity. And until the high school, I played Taekwondo. I had a black belt even. And then I always dreamed to have a flying kick like a Jackie Chan or Bruce Lee. But I couldn't do that. Look at me, I'm not that kind of light. But in space, I can do that. Yeah, it was fantastic time for me as a Taekwondo player. And also I was a representative of Korea because I was the first Korean citizen who've been in space stations. So I had several national performance, and then most important mission of mine was doing the 18 experiment assigned by the Korean government. As Scott talked about that, there was 36,000 candidates. Yeah, all they want to be the first Korean astronaut. And I also wanted to be the first Korean astronaut, of course, because when I was a kid, like them, and then I watched the TV and the movie, Star Wars and Star Trek, and then being in space is really cool and awesome, and then dream to be the astronaut. But as grown up, I realized that maybe only Russian or American can go to the space because they have a spacecraft. So I almost forgot about my dream. But one day when I was in graduate school during my PhD, when I separated my DNA on the microchip, I read a newspaper, and then there was an announcement from the government. They will have a short-term project to make one person to go up to the space station, and the main mission would be an 18 experiment assigned by the Korean government. So I thought at least I could apply, because minimum requirement was should be older than 19 years old, and it should have a Korean citizenship. So at the time I was 28 years old, and then I was a Korean citizen, so it was enough. And then I applied, and then once I saw this number, I was pretty sure that I cannot make it, because out of 36,000 is lower than 1%. As an engineer, we shouldn't try those kind of low probability mission, So I was not a good engineer actually at the time. But as a person who has a passion or ambition, it's enough to just apply. And then so there was, actually my scenario was like that. I just want to make a first stage. At the time they announced that they made a 300 after first stage. So I want to be at least 300. 300 out of 36,000 is it's also a big deal. So if I can make 300, maybe I can write one line of the sentence in a resume as a PhD. Because I should find my job at the time. And also I think about if I will be a grandma or a mom, one day I can watch TV with my kids, and then they may be so excited to watch the first Korean astronaut, and I can tell them I was in the middle of the selection process. She's my friend, so I can get an autograph for you kindly. There was my scenario actually. But surprisingly, I made a 30 and 10, and finally, final 2 on the Christmas day of 2006. So that was, I can tell you, one of the biggest Christmas presents from the Santa Claus at the time. And not also for astronaut, but also for experiment, we had a huge competition in Korea. It was national competition. In Korea, I don't know whether you know or not, but we are very, very, good, huge emphasis on science and technology because our land is really small and we don't have any natural resource at all. So always Korean people, had a great passion to do better and more science and technology. So we had more than 100 research institute and then engineering school, and all they proposed their own experiment to make the first Korean space experiment. So there was more than 100 proposals to be the first Korean space experiment, but finally, Ministry of Science and Technology picked the 18 experiment. I brought all 18 experiments to the space station. And to do that, I had a 1-year training in Russia, not only physical training, but also toilet training and emergency evacuation training, or eating, and then hyperbolic chamber, or some music training, and also sea survival training and mountain survival training, because during the landing or launch, we could have an emergency landing on the sea or mountains, so we should have those kind of training. As a person who've never been in military service at all, even if in Korea, there's no exception. All the guys should be in military service, so maybe they could have a similar experience, but I was a woman, so I don't have to do anything related with the military as an obligation, so I didn't have any experience like that, but it was tough, but it was, worth it to challenge something, because very, precious for an astronaut, and also it's a really unique experience in Russian Air Force base. And finally, I went to the space. From the Baikonur, Kazakhstan. Here's the Kazakhstan Baikonur, and then from the 3-hour flight from the Moscow, and then there's a huge empty plane. That's because Russian people picked that place to make a space center, and then there's no climate change, no temperature change. They have a few rain, so it's perfect place to make a rocket launch pad and then make some kind of rocket experiment. So we went there 2 weeks before our launch, and then we should have some training also. We should have several event and ceremony. But so many technicians, engineers should prepare for our own launch, so assemble the rocket inside of the assembly building, and then transport the rocket to the launch pad. So it was the 2 days before rocket launch of mine. And after that, we should stay, during that time, all the 3 crewmates, we should, inside of the cosmonaut hotel, is almost like quarantine, and we are not allowed to touch any other people. Even with my mom, I should have a glass to talk, because astronauts should be totally, perfectly clean, not to bring any small organism to the space station. So it was kind of isolated, but also it was unique time. And then the very day of my launch, and then I should clean all my body and wear the 2 layers of the underwear and the flight suit. And then finally we had a traditional kind of event, and then I autographed on my hotel room before leaving my hotel room. And then it was all the astronauts who stayed in here, and then they autographed on the door. But my place is mostly stayed by the women astronauts. So there's a few autographs, so it's easy to autograph in a really big. And then it was the first Korean language on the hotel. I was so honored to be the first Korean like that. And then priest, Russian Orthodox, came to us to pray for us. But it's also very unique. But everybody told me, and then he came to pray for us, so I cannot complain, And finally, we took a bus, and we should go to the Energia, the name of the space company in Russia. They designed the spacesuit, they designed the rocket or some other capsule, so we went there to wear the real spacesuit. And the spacesuit is almost 10 kilograms, so it's kind of heavy, but we should wear because to protect ourselves and to survive in space. And at the time, it was really impressive. All the cars are layover, and then they went out of the car and waited for us because they already knew that we are the astronaut who will go up on that day. It's 5 hours before the launch, and then we finally went to the Energia, and then so many technicians and engineers came to Earth to set up all the spacesuit. And we should have the medical belt inside of the spacesuit, and then they check whether that sensor is working properly or not. Because even if we cannot say at all, and then they can check whether our heart is beating or not through those kind of sensor inside. And also they check the helmet and all the suits perfectly air tightening or not, and even my mom and daddies came, but of course my mom and daddy didn't know what's happening there, but they are so happy to be there, and I checked all my suit, and then just to check whether my suit is totally enough safe or not, and then finally we get out of that Energia company and report to the head of the space agency in Russia, because we were dispatched by them to the space station as the official crew of the Russia. And we should go to the launch pad by the bus. Yeah, it's a very kind of unique moment for me. Yeah, it's once in a whole my life, because Korean government doesn't have any other future human space flight plan yet. So, everybody don't know whether you will be a first and last or just the first. So I had a really, memorable time at that. And one more really honorable part is the very first female astronaut in the world. Her name is Valentina Tereshkova, and she came to the Baikonur to support me. And then even she grabbed my arm and then walked with me to the launch pad, and then she kept telling me it will be totally okay, so don't worry about anything at all. And then she came there, and just suddenly, I couldn't heard about her at all before, whether she will come or not, but she came by herself and then support me and then keep telling me it will be totally okay. So it was really, touching and honorable. And all three of us, my commander and my engineer and me, and then go up to the rocket, and then Soyuz capsule inside. At the time, we called the scientists always rise it, because we should rise it. But here, like that, I'm rise it, and then Scott is commander, and you maybe engineer. So at the time, I also should be on the rise it to do some payload specialist, as a payload specialist or something. And then, space participant like that. And then finally, we had countdown, and then there was a kind of small funny episode, because in Florida, if you have a shuttle launch, you have a big huge screen to have a countdown, but here in Kazakhstan there's no thing like that. So even my mom cannot know when the rocket will be launched, because only in Russian they told me. So finally rocket was gone, but my mom thinks like rocket has a fire under, and then rocket was disappeared on the sky. So my mom fell down because she feel like she lost her own daughter. So emergency team should come to my mom to wake her up. And then, but one more funny thing is my brother is right beside of my mom, but he didn't know that my mom fell down or not, because he was an engineer. He was so excited to see the rocket launch. So he holding the camera and then watching the rocket like that. So he didn't know that whether my mom was falling down or not. And then my daddy was shocked. And then it was a huge kind of funny story of my family. As an engineer, his action is really, really natural, because once in his life, how can he see that rocket launch? How can he see those many space specialists? So he was so excited. So he doesn't care about mom. But my mom thinks like I'm disappeared. Oh my God, my daughter is in that crab. So for my mom, rocket was crap. But for my brother, rocket was so beautiful something. So it's a really huge kind of comparison. And then finally, in 2 days, I went up to the space station. And as I told you, I brought 18 experiments there, and then we brought some seed to growing up in the space station, and then brought several fruit fly to watch whether the gene activity is different or not in the space and on the ground, and then take a photo of my photo, because all the astronauts, there's no exception, they should have a puppy face, and space kimchi, Korean famous food kimchi, and then rice and miso soup, and then green tea. All the foods was developed for the space food in space by the several research institute. and several chemical experiment, and then mechanical experiment, electrical kind of experiment, and then we also had several microscopes to watch the atmosphere of the Earth, and I took some tools to measure the noise because so many machines are running in the space station, so we want to check how much noise we have there. And it's not jello, it's water, but only because of zero gravity, it seems like jello. And of course, I should, show the pride of our own country. So those long, but I felt like too short, 10 days. Flight was over, and then I should come back to the Earth, and then several of you guys already knew that I had a ballistic re-entry. It's very abnormal situation. Of course, 20, 30 years ago, for the Russian people, it's very normal, and then, very, just a common landing method is the ballistic, but nowadays it's not normal, but we had some, accident during the separation, so I should have ballistic re-entries, and should land it on an emergently on some kind of big, huge plane, and then we should wait around 30, 40 minutes until the search and rescue team came to us to save us. And so many people used to think about space technology is only for the astronaut, but I don't think so. You already use so many technology from the space, not only matrix, but also GPS, and then your rocket, your golf club, and some tennis racket, and then bicycle. All the materials are from the space technology, so I can tell you space is everywhere, and space actually is all around. And I want to close my talk with one of my favorite words from the Tsiolkovsky, and then he's the very old, famous Russian scientist, and he told a planet is the cradle of humanity, but one cannot live in a cradle forever. Actually, the Earth, our beautiful planet, is the cradle of our own human. But we cannot live here forever because we should grow up as a baby. And then baby should grow up, then they should kick outside of the cradle because they should take off their diaper, and they should go to their toilet by themselves. To do that, they should get out of the cradle. So like those kind of baby, human also, even if Earth is a really comfortable and a perfect place for us, but to grow up, to develop ourselves, we should go out of the Earth, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Soyeon. You can see how she won. Our last speaker this evening is Adelaide's favorite son. Dr. Andy Thomas was born in Adelaide, South Australia. His mother, I believe, still lives here. He received a Bachelor's of Engineering in Mechanical Engineering with first-class honors from the University of Adelaide. Later received a doctorate in mechanical engineering from the same institution in 1978. He began his career as a research scientist with the Lockheed Aeronautics Systems Company, working on fluid dynamics. He was selected in 1989, he moved to Pasadena, California, one hot, dry climate to another, to join the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, and was doing research there. He was selected by NASA in March of 1992 as an astronaut. He did his year's training with the astronaut program. He is a 4-time spaceflight veteran. He flew on STS-77, a 10-day mission where they deployed several satellites. In January of 1998, he launched aboard Space Shuttle Endeavour as part of the STS-89 crew to dock with the Mir space station, and he served aboard Mir as flight engineer and returned after 141 days in space. He flew next in STS-102 in 2001 on the 8th shuttle mission to the International Space Station. And again, STS-114 on board the shuttle Discovery, which was the return to flight mission following the Columbia accident. Dr. Thomas has spent 177 days in space, and we're honored to have you with us this evening.
Thank you.
Well, good evening. Thank you all for coming out to hear us tonight, and my thanks to the Italian Chamber of Commerce for providing the venue. I'm going to talk a little bit about what we've been doing in space in recent years, and that involves the shuttle and the space station. And then I'm going to talk about where we're going next, what's coming next, because as you know, the shuttle has been phased out. And I'm going to begin by showing you a launch sequence of a shuttle to give you an idea of what it's like to go into the shuttle, strap yourself in, and do that amazing ride up into space, which I've had the privilege to do on 4 separate occasions. As you can imagine, when you go out to a launch pad and strap yourself into about 500,000 gallons of high explosive, it's an introspective time. And I do remember my first flight thinking, I'm about to have the most extraordinary experience of my life, which I did, and I thought, this is a long, long way from Adelaide. My last flight, my thoughts lying on the launch pad were a little more prosaic. I lay there zipped up tightly in my pressure suit thinking I should really not have had that second cup of coffee at breakfast. When you lie on the launch pad, you hear all the communications. At 31 seconds before launch, the control is taken over by the onboard computers, and we're told to close our visors, start our oxygen flow, and things get very quiet. At 6 seconds before launch, the main engines of the shuttle are started, and they run up to full speed. You're still bolted very firmly to the ground, and the engines are run to full speed, which causes the whole vehicle to sway and lurch while you're strapped to the ground. And they check the engines. They make sure the engines are running properly. They have some critical parameters that they check to make sure that they're within the right limits, because they want to avoid what they euphemistically call an uncontained engine shutdown. That means it blows up. If the engines pass their checks, a signal is sent to ignite the solid rocket boosters, and at that point there's a tremendous explosion. Everything starts shaking violently, and you're on your way. And this is a sequence put together from one of my flights. Here we are on the launch pad. You'll hear the communication of the crew on board the shuttle during this, and you'll see the view they have in the upper left of the screen.
They're coming up. I see them all coming up.
Engines are running. You're on your way.
Go by the tower. Should be throttling up. Wait for the roll. B-104. 8 seconds. There's the roll. Now, may we come back to the normal command? Roll program, Houston. Roger. Go village. Roger, roll.
You are strapped to the outside. This is the view you'd see looking back down. And I could see a view like this because I had a mirror, and I could actually see out the overhead window, and I could see the coastline rushing away. At this point, you're burning fuel at a rate of 12 tons every second. Here we're going supersonic. It's not long, 2 minutes into the flight, the solid rocket boosters have depleted all their fuel, and they're explosively released. And you continue on riding the main engines up into space, and you can hear the speed increases being called out every few minutes by increases of thousands of miles an hour every few minutes. At 8.5 minutes into the flight, we separate off the tank. The fuel is all gone, the engines are shut down, and we're off the tank. And at that point, we're in zero gravity, and we're traveling at 30,000 kilometers an hour. And we immediately unstrap and go to work and start prepping the vehicle for on-orbit operations, basically to turn a rocket into a spacecraft. And there you see the tank receding into the distance. The shuttle's flown about 130-odd missions. The last 35 or 40 of those missions have been to build the International Space Station. And I will show you a digital representation of the space station when I first visited it in 2001, and with a bit of digital trickery as we do this fly around, you'll see it morph into the configuration that it currently is today. It is a huge vehicle. It consists of elements from a number of countries. The elements you see there are provided by the Russians. That's the Russian segments. There you see the Soyuz capsule that carries the Russian crews to and from the space station, and today, US crews. And as we come round, you'll see the European module, the Japanese modules, and you see the solar arrays. It currently has a mass of about 400 tons, and it is as wide as a football field, being about 100 meters wingtip to wingtip. It is an amazing development, amazing engineering undertaking, not the least because it was a vehicle put together in space. It couldn't be dry fitted on the ground and checked. It was put together in space and had to work properly the first time. That was made possible by the shuttle. Once the space station was assembled, of course, we did not need a continuing need for the shuttle, and the shuttles themselves were retired and shipped on the ferry flights to the various museums, and this shows Discovery last year over Washington on its way to the Smithsonian. That vehicle, of course, the shuttle, is what provided US access to and from space since the early 1980s for 30 years, and is now no longer available. So what are we doing to replace it? Well, we're developing actually 3 vehicles in collaboration with private corporations, and they're shown here. They're capsule vehicles. They won't land on runway, except perhaps for the Sierra Nevada vehicle. These don't have the upmass capability of the shuttle, but they do provide a very safe and reliable means of transporting crews to and from the space station. These are being developed under private sponsorship with some NASA money, and will become the workhorse vehicles for transporting crews to and from the space station. Mark, I need your help. To launch those vehicles, we're developing this rocket, which is the Orion SLS combination. This is a large, heavy lift booster that will launch over 100 tons to low Earth orbit. The first flight of this vehicle will be in 2017. No sound. Sound. This is using technology that's derived from the shuttle, very similar solid rocket boosters and engines derived from the shuttle. And it will give us a capability that will be quite unique because we'll be able to carry large objects up into space. And that will give us a very unique capability. So what are we going to do with that when we have this large rocket? Well, there are a number of destinations out there. First of all, there's the moon. Now you say we've been to the moon. Why go back? Well, we have been to the moon, but we've learned a lot about the moon that we didn't know. The moon has a landmass about the size of Africa, and we've only been to 6 places. That's not very much. In this view you see here, you'll see the Earth rising over the moon. This is actually from a Japanese orbiting probe. And you'll see some of the craters on the moon. What we've discovered is that some of these craters in the polar regions of the moon are permanently dark. They're shadowed. And as a result, they've accumulated ice from cometary impacts for the last 4 billion years. And we've discovered that there's significant amounts of water on the moon. That's actually a pretty amazing discovery because water is a unique resource for humans, of course. It's used for living, but if you take water and you break down electrochemically, you can make hydrogen and oxygen. Hydrogen you can use as rocket fuel, oxygen as rocket fuel, but oxygen you can also breathe. So there's actually resources available on the moon that would enable us to do other missions beyond the moon, and that is a very significant impact on how you develop lunar transportation systems, and that's one of the reasons we should go back to the moon. To prepare for that, we've been mapping the moon in unprecedented details. We have lunar orbiting mapping satellites that are photographing the moon down to a resolution of better than about 0.5 meter. And we've actually been able to photograph the Apollo landing sites. And this view here is the Apollo 11 landing site, and that bright point of light you see there is the remnants of the Apollo lander. The descent stage of the Apollo lander still on the surface of the moon. And there it is in close-up a little bit. And if you look carefully, you can see, well, I can't see it, but down here, these black tracks are the footprints of Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, still visible on the moon over 40 years later. And those footprints will remain there for about 5 million years. Hopefully we'll see a human lunar return before too long. Where else can we go? Well, there's a number of other destinations we can visit when we've got this large delivery vehicle. Asteroids. targets of great interest. Why are they interesting? Well, we now know that some of these contain water, so they provide some of the benefits that we could expect if we go to the moon. They also contain organic material and amino acids. In fact, there's a school of thought that says these impacts from these objects provided the seeds that led to life here on Earth. So there's a lot of scientific interest in why we should go to objects like these. We also know that every now and again one of these objects comes in and hits the Earth. A very large one, about 30 kilometers across, struck the Earth 65 million years ago and led to the demise of the dinosaurs. A smaller one, about 30 meters, struck in Tunguska, Siberia in 1908, I think, devastating a huge region of the countryside. So these are very serious threats to our planet, and that is another reason why we should try to understand them as much as we can, and why we should consider visiting one, and certainly sampling their material. But ultimately, the destination of great interest has to be Mars. We've learned a terrific amount about Mars in recent years. We've learned that it was once much warmer and wetter than it is today. And it was warm and wet at a time when the Earth was warm and wet and life formed here on the Earth. Who's to say that that did not actually happen at the same time on Mars? Wouldn't it be fascinating to go there and find evidence of fossilized evidence of early microbial life on Mars? I think that would be a very profound discovery, and to my way of thinking would more than adequately justify the risk and the cost of human exploration of Mars. And I very much hope that in years to come we will see human footprints on the surface of Mars. I will close with a picture of a view of Earth from space, and you're all going to say, well, that of course is not Earth, that's Saturn, but it is Earth. And this just shows you how space is really, really big. And there's one small video I'll add to this. As professional astronauts, we are very serious about what we do in space, but not always. And this shows some zero-gravity tricks during one of my missions. This is the sleeping bag. This is how you sleep in space. You just tie it off somewhere so that you wake up in the same place you went to sleep and close your eyes and go to sleep. This is a novel use of a cyclogometer. This is the galley. This is where food is prepared. It's mostly freeze-dried food for the shuttle and reconstituted. And while my crewmates were making their food, I was playing with mine. All right, that's enough. Thank you very much.
Well, now we come to what is perhaps the most fun part of the evening, where we open the floor up for questions to our two astronauts. We have some people with microphones in the back. If you have a question that you would like to ask, please raise your hand, and this is your opportunity to ask a question to one of our astronauts. We'll have to hold the questions for Paolo until later. Yes?
A simple question. What reason was the space shuttle's demise? Why did they close them down? What was the purpose of that?
It had got too expensive to run. The space shuttle's an amazing vehicle, but it's a very unforgiving technology. It takes a lot of care and feeding to keep it running. When I first started flying, a typical shuttle launch was about $300 million. That's a lot of money. When I finished flying, with all the additional controls that we'd put on following the Columbia accident, a shuttle flight was typically about $1 billion. That is unsustainable for anyone, even the US government. And it was recognized that we had to honor the commitments and finish the space station, but after that we didn't need a vehicle of that capability or that cost. And these other vehicles that I described are going to provide the transportation capability we need at much lower cost. It was too dangerous, too. It was a very dangerous vehicle to fly in.
I think we have a young explorer who wishes to ask a question. Come this way. Right there. There you go.
When I go in aircrafts, I get a lot of turbulence. So how much turbulence would it be when you go up in a spacecraft?
Soyeon, would you like to?
Can I?
Turbulence in airplanes. How much do you get on the way up?
In short, it's too much, actually. Actually, before starting the engine, I cannot feel any shake at all, but when the engine started, you could feel really shaky and noise and a huge kind of trembling. But go down for a while, but second engine turn on and again, the trembling like that. But it takes just around 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, you can get a zero gravity, so you don't have to worry about those kind of trembling.
Another young explorer here.
Mm-hmm.
In your activities as a space engineer, do you have any say in the design of the new spacecraft going up into space?
Yes, that's a good question, actually. Do astronauts have any role in the design of these new vehicles? And the answer is yes, we do. We have astronaut participation with the companies doing it to make sure that they meet the standards that NASA requires. We have what are called human rating standards, which is just saying, it's a complicated way of saying they have to meet certain requirements to fly crews, and we work with the manufacturers of the spacecraft to ensure that they meet those standards. So that's an important function that many astronauts are fulfilling right now.
How much air do you have to take?
How much what?
How much air do you have to take into space? Very good questions.
It's almost same as you right here. I also wonder about that question before flying, but in space station, we always have enough oxygen and enough other air, so you can take a breath like here, but it was a really touching story, maybe almost same age like you, and then right before my lunch, one small cute kid and then give me a gift, and then one big kind of paper, and then there was a 2 circle, and then she write a letter, and then here's the oxygen tank for you, just in case. Yeah. So I could have even more oxygen there, but almost same like you, here.
Most of the shuttle flights carry tanks of oxygen for the crews so that there's always adequate supply there. But they also produce oxygen on board by electrolyzing water into hydrogen and oxygen. The hydrogen is vented overboard and the oxygen is fed into the cabin to provide fresh oxygen.
Very good. Here we go.
Hello. Is there a specific degree that would prepare a student to work on projects in space colonization?
Is there a specific academic qualifications that would help work on the space program? Soyeon, would you answer?
In our case, we had a national competition, so in the very first stage, they don't ask any academic requirement. But finally, and after filtering several stages, and all we had more than bachelor's degree now. Most of us has a scientific degree more than master's, but maybe NASA program is a little different, I think.
NASA takes astronauts with very backgrounds. We have physicians, medical doctors, engineers such as myself, physicists, chemists, scientists of various backgrounds, all technical degrees of some kind. So there's generally degrees in engineering or a related field what are needed. That's the most popular credential.
I would have to say a degree from the International Space University is a very good thing for people to do.
Andy, I assume you would think that there are deficiencies with science and how it's dealt with in Australia. What sort of things should private industry, government be doing in Australia as far as science is concerned?
That is a tough question, and that problem is not unique to Australia. It's part of the Western world. I think people of my generation don't do a very good job of teaching science. It's taught as it's rather bland, it's not challenging. The creativity and the knowledge it gives you is not brought forward. The sense of empowerment it gives you is not brought forward. And it has to compete with all of these media activities and popular entertainment. So it's losing ground in the Western world. And that's a big threat to society. I think one thing that absolutely is necessary, though, is that the governments have to get behind their universities and adequately fund university at the undergraduate level and at postgraduate research level. Because if you don't do that, your economy will wither eventually, because that's where the engines of the economy ultimately come from in the long term. One of the biggest challenges is motivating young people in the face of all of these other distractions they have, and you have to do that at an early age. You have to do that. You can't expect a teenager in their mid-teens to suddenly be inspired by science if they haven't had the seeds of interest laid in their primary school years. So we need policies and spending in primary schools to open up the richness of the science world to these young people at an early age.
For Dr. Lee, I'm over here. Does weightlessness and life in space interfere with normal female biorhythms?
I cannot hear that. Could you ask again?
Does life in space actually change your normal feminine biorhythms?
Normal.
Did it affect your female physiology?
Yeah, right. Actually, I don't think so. I was totally same before and after. And I also asked several female astronauts whether they changed it or not, but they told me totally almost same. And then especially some woman who stayed in space station more than 6 months, and then they normally same as on the Earth, so they could have a same kind of period, same kind of reaction like that. But in my case, I only stayed in there 11 days, so it's not easy to compare. But almost same, almost.
Yeah, we have another young person to inspire down here.
Do female astronauts have any advantages to male astronauts?
Do female astronauts have any advantages to male astronauts?
I had a huge advantage of a female astronaut because I had a long hair. Yeah. And then when Andrew had to take a photo only of the face in the space, we cannot distinguish whether he's in space or not because his hair is kind of short. But in my case, I have a long hair, so I had a really puffy, kind of big, huge hair. And so I don't even have to rolling like that. Yeah, I just show up and everybody knows that I'm in space because my ponytail is always glow around and then running around. So it's a huge privilege to be a female astronaut.
But I will also add that very good scientific data shows that having a female member of the crew has a very important effect in terms of the crew dynamics and how the crew operates, and that there is often a larger sense of collaboration and sharing, and basically the guys behave better.
In general, it's a kind of nature, and then most of the guys compete each other for more attractive from the women, so it's very high efficiency they always make, I believe. Yeah.
Andy is also married to an astronaut as well,
right.
So perhaps you have a...
If she was here, she would insist that there are great advantages to being a female astronaut. At NASA, our office has about 35 or 40% of the astronauts are women, and their capabilities and credentials are very impressive.
Where are we? Where's the mics? There we are.
I was just curious what it's like when you get back. What issues do you have with readjustment to gravity and stuff like that? I was just curious, how long does it take and what does it feel like and what are the issues when you return to Earth?
In my case, I had a serious back pain, and then it was a kind of sensitive issue among the people, but finally we realized that it's not a big deal because I was kind of younger than other astronauts, so I grew 3 centimeters in the space station, and because my body was really flexible, but it makes my huge pain on my back. But right after getting back, I checked my height, and then I totally get back as usual. So 3 centimeters I lost during 2 hours. So also made a huge pain on my back. And so many people ask me whether it's from my ballistic reentry or some kind of shock, but it wasn't at all, only because of the elongation and the shrinkage. So, but that's because there's no medicine, there's no recovery process, just the time. So after 2 weeks, I became totally okay. And then also right after getting back, because of the gravity, we should have some kind of feeling dizzy, and then vomiting, and then motion sickness. And my case, I only stayed there 10 days, and then so I don't lose any muscle or bone, but several astronauts, maybe if they stay there and then lose some bone and muscle, as I heard. So I just stayed in hospital around 1 week in Moscow, and then getting back to the Korea around 1 week more, and then I feel like I became totally okay. But maybe his case is different.
You did both long duration and short duration missions. Perhaps you could talk about the difference in...
Coming back from a long duration flight where you haven't experienced gravity in many weeks, in my case 20 weeks, was an extraordinary experience because you feel gravity as if you've never felt it before, and you have an appreciation for how we take gravity for granted on the ground. And I came down in a reclined seat, lying basically horizontal, and the first time I sat up on the edge of the seat, the cabin just literally spun. You know, you hear people say the room spun. Well, it did. My neurovestibular system was all disturbed, and I couldn't stand straight. And then you take a step. You lift one leg and you put it in front of the other. You have no idea how heavy a leg actually is until you have to lift one up. And the other thing that happens is there are muscles in your shoulders holding up your arms and then holding your head, which haven't had to hold any force against gravity for a long period of time. And so after a couple of days being back on the ground, you have all of these aches and pains. You have backache pain, you have leg pain, you have neck pain. You feel like you've run a marathon without training for it. It passes, but it's a very strange sensation. The balance and the neurovestibular problems can linger for some hours before you start to feel good. I remember when I landed, it was late in the day, I staggered to bed, thinking everything will be fine when I wake up in the morning. I'll just get out of bed and I'll feel good. Well, I was dead wrong about that. I was staggering just as much next morning as I was before I went to bed. Which you don't improve yourself by lying in bed. You have to get up and walk around and exercise the muscles and get the balance back. And you do that by walking around. But it is a very strange sensation when you come back and first feel gravity on your body.
I think most people would have an opinion one way or the other. Sorry, down here. Most people would have an opinion one way or the other about whether there's intelligent life out there in the universe, and I'm sure it would be interesting for us to have an opinion from somebody that's studied outer space a lot more than most of us, and perhaps looked into all sorts of possibilities. So it'd be interesting for your opinions on what you think about intelligent life and maybe, how likely it might be within a couple of generations, if you do believe that there is any, that we might be able to, experience some of that.
So a likelihood of intelligent life
out
in
there.
the universe. So yeah.
yeah, always from the kids, and have you ever seen alien in space station? They ask me, but I cannot tell as a scientist and engineer because I couldn't see any kind of proof that there's an alien out there, and then it was not that convincible even there was proof, so I cannot believe that there was intelligence out there. But also I cannot believe that there was no intelligence out there because there's no clear evidence that there's no intelligence out there. So I just waiting for the really big, huge news, and then with the really convincible evidence to convince me to believe that whether they are or not. So I'm kind of neutral, and I'm waiting for the news, actually.
There's been recent discoveries of what we call exoplanets, planets orbiting other stars. We now know that every star in the galaxy has on average about 2 planets. Those are the ones we can see or detect. So in all probability there's more. So that means there's literally billions of planets in our galaxy. Billions. But they're a long, long way away. It seems to me highly probable that life has formed on some of those other planets. I don't think what happened here on Earth is so unique that it couldn't have happened somewhere else. In fact, there's a school of thought that thinks that life is actually a natural manifestation of the behavior of matter, which is a tremendously interesting topic. So I actually think it's highly likely that there is microbial life elsewhere in the universe, certainly. Now, for microbial life to develop into technologically capable life is a much, much more challenging thing. That requires very unique conditions, and that's probably a very low probability. So I think we're not going to, if we find life on Mars, for example, or on Europa, it would be microbial life. We're not going to find intelligent life. That doesn't mean it's not there. I just think it's a very low probability event, likelihood.
Yes, Andy? Hi. Here, yeah. I also worked at the Jet Propulsion Lab. I left in 1979, which I believe was a few years before you arrived.
Yeah.
And since I've retired in Adelaide, I joined this is kind of a tangentially related question to the last one. I've joined a small private research group which studies UFO phenomena. And so I was just wondering in that regard, have you ever seen anything in orbit which was an unexplainable phenomena, or have you received any stories from some of your colleague astronauts that they have seen anything that they couldn't explain readily?
No. The short answer is no. We get asked this question a lot. You know, if you watch something like the Discovery Channel, they have these shows on where they show this secret NASA footage of objects seen trailing the shuttle. Well, yes, there are objects trailing the shuttle. It's our water dumps. It's frozen urine, which we dump overboard. And I cringe when I see these videos of this stuff, and they say this is evidence of aliens and being covered up by NASA. What a lot of nonsense. Absolute nonsense. There are no observations or sightings of UFOs from the shuttle, and I personally do not believe in UFOs as being extraterrestrial craft. UFOs are things that have not been identified, which can be, ice floating around the shuttle, or here on Earth, lightning phenomena, aircraft phenomena. I do not believe in extraterrestrial origin of things, of lights in the sky.
Who's got the mic?
Can you tell us how can you tell the difference between day and night when you are in the station, please?
What's it like, the difference between day and night?
Actually, station is rotating 16 times a day, so every 90 minutes you can see the sunrise and sunset. But it doesn't mean that you have a 90 minute a day, As I remember, we control our own light inside, so we almost have a 24 hours in a day, but sometimes because of the mission, we elongate the day a little several hours and we make a little shorter day because of the mission, as I remember. So sometimes I had a napping time because we have a little longer day because of the mission. So we just control inside of the light, and then even though we had a window, it's too small, and mostly we just close the shutter, so outside light cannot disturb us. But sometimes when I went to the big, huge window right beside and having a experiment, I could feel that every 90 minutes I have sunset and sunrise. It's a really great privilege, as I remember.
You're not aware of the day-night cycle. We have a regular 24-hour day when we're in orbit, and you just, if you happen to be by a window, you notice sometimes it's dark, sometimes it's light.
Hi, my name is Will Reed, and I'm one of the students at the ISU Summer Space Program. We've been working on a project that addresses what steps countries that don't have developed space programs should take to develop a sustainable space program. In your opinion, for Australia, what steps should we take to develop a sustainable space program?
Well, you have to have funding for a start. You have to have political leaders who are interested in space and who are willing to invest in something which won't pay a return in their term in office. It'll pay in the term for the next elected government or one beyond that. I'm afraid we don't have political visionaries like that in the system here, nor do we have them in the US for that matter. And that's one of the biggest problems that we have. Australia needs to make investments in the space sector that suit its needs. What would they be? They would be telecommunications, environmental monitoring, shoreline monitoring, remote sensing. Australia has such a very large landmass with very low population density. That's the space resource that Australia could really use. And Australia should make investments in deploying satellites of that capability. Australia could do a lot more. You know, the Woomera test range is absolutely unique. And, you know, it would be a viable launch platform if there was interest in doing that. But there's not a lot of interest, I'm afraid to say. So that's why I hope that people such as yourselves will carry that banner forward, and as you develop in your professional careers, start seeding those kinds of opportunities.
Over here? Yeah.
Looking at Andy play with his food, it doesn't look very appetizing, but what does the food actually taste like?
What does the food taste like?
Food tastes like... most of the food tastes like instant food in your Woolworth market or something, because all the food should be preserved a long time, and then most of them are freeze-dried or canned inside, so we should make some heat to make warm kind of food, and then also we should add some water to make it real. But yeah, frankly speaking, your mom's food is much better than space food. But practically, space food is much more expensive than your mom's food. So at the time I realized that not all expensive food is not that good.
Eddie, how about the long duration aspect of the food?
Well, the thing I missed most on my long flight was, firstly, we didn't have any refrigeration, so we didn't have any frozen foods. They were all freeze-dried. They're the kind of food that you'd have on a camping trip. You might have packaged food and you reconstitute it with water. That got a little old after a few weeks, but it's nutritional. You miss fresh food too. You don't have any fresh fruit or fresh food or fresh bread. So you miss those kinds of foods. And we do have a good selection of food though, and we have a good selection of drinks, fruit drinks of various kinds, tea, coffee, various canned foods. So there's a wide selection of food available to cater for your taste.
Hi, we've just had a question come in over Twitter from Daydara, and she asked, could you please describe the feeling you had when you saw the view of the Earth from space?
So when you first saw the Earth from space?
my first impression is Korean Peninsula is too smaller than ice pack. Because when I was in Korea, my country was too big to travel in a day. But when I found out Korean Peninsula through the window, comparing with Australia and comparing with China and US, and it's really small. So to pass over the Russia, and then it takes around 10 minutes or a little less than 10 minutes. China also almost same, US also. But my country less than a minute to pass by. So small. But in addition, I realized that how lucky I am, because even that small country, there's no reason that I should be born in that country, but I was born and then had a great educational background, and then not only geographically but also timing and temporally. If I were born in Korea 50 years ago, maybe I cannot have anything at all like this. But yeah, in right time, in right place, I was born, and I had a really sweet family and great friends and great colleagues. So finally, I could be in space station. So I feel like those kind of things. And then at the time, I realized that I should be very responsible to support other people who will be born in really isolated place, like in third country or third world and Africa. They also had no choice to be born there. There was no reason, and they don't have any fault at all. They didn't do any mistake at all, even before birth, but they should be there. So I deeply realized that we should do something for them also.
How's the view?
The first time I floated up to the window after I unstrapped, and the payload bay doors were open, so we had this great panorama, and it was breathtaking. You gasp because you see the Earth below you, and the sky is so black. Space is really black, and that was just amazing. And we also we just separated off the tank, so you could see the tank way off in the distance, tumbling as it was preparing to re-enter the Earth. And of course the tank carried cryogenic fuels, which are very cold, so there were shards of ice floating with it, which would glint in the sunlight, and you'd see these beautiful flashes of light. They end up as UFO pictures usually. But it was really just spectacular.
Hello, thank you for a great talk. Can you tell me what it's like when you're sleeping in space? Do you dream in space? And how does it affect your dreaming? Is it the same as on the Earth?
Actually, I'm kind of very sensitive sleeping person. So whenever I heard just a little noise, I just wake up. And whenever I change my bed, I cannot sleep very well. So especially in space, and then even inside of the sleeping bag, I should floating inside like this. And the sleeping bag is too big for me. And then I tried to tie very tightly, even with a rubber band, to make me pressure on the wall, but it's not that effective. So keep floating. So every 10-30 minutes I wake up because it's very unstable. But finally I realized that if you are too exhausted, it cannot help. You can fall asleep. So after 2-3 days later, I could sleep more than an hour and then more than 2 hours, but just until the end, and I should wake, even until the end of my flight, I should wake up every hour or 2 hours. It's kind of painful, but not that painful because I can sleep inside of the cabin, and then right beside of my sleeping bag, I had a window. So whenever I wake up, I just look through the window. I had a really quiet and calm time. So it was not that tough, actually, for me. How about you, Andrew?
When you first arrive in space, it's hard to sleep. I mean, you've just had the ride of your life. You're excited. You're adapting to zero gravity. After a few days, you do adapt, and it becomes easy to sleep. It's strange to get used to it, though, because we're so accustomed to lying on a bed with a pillow, and you don't do that. You just get into a sleeping bag, strap your arms down, because if you don't, you wake up like this. And you just have to close your eyes. Now, I sleep on my side normally. So you think about it in space. How do you sleep on your side? Well, there is no side. There's no up and down, so there's not a side. So you've just got to sort of tune everything out and go to sleep.
and it takes a bit of adjustment. To answer the question about dreams, I don't dream a lot, at least I don't remember the dreams that I have, but I did dream. I remember on the Mir space station I had a dream once that I was back in Adelaide playing in the street as a young child, and we were playing football or something, and I said, to my friends who were in the dream, I said, you'll have to excuse me, but I need to float. Now, psychologists can tell you what that means, but that's the only time I ever dreamed of in space with about something connected to being in space.
We have only time for one more question. So we want someone who's got a really, 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 really good question. Can you stand up, please? That didn't help.
How do you have a shower in space? And does water taste different?
How do you shower? And does the water taste
Actually,
different?
in Mir, you have a shower kind of...
No, we didn't.
No?
As
I heard, maybe
they did originally, but they took it out.
Took it out, okay. We don't have a shower booth, so I just swipe my body with a wet towel and a wet kind of handkerchief. So at first I feel a little uncomfortable because even shampoo I should with a wet towel, so it's not that kind of clean feeling. But after 2-3 days later, humankind are really adaptable person. So even with a wet towel, I feel so clean and fresh. So we don't have shower booth. And one more question was shower.
How did the water taste?
Water taste is, of course, different because all the water to drink, maybe we transport from the ground and then they add several ions and several kind of things and then purifying like that. So taste a little different. And unfortunately, we don't have a cold water in space station, just kind of warm and room temperature water. But I love to drink ice water, so it's kind of disappointing first, but also it's easy to adapt.
I really can't add anything. You bathe much like people in hospitals bathe with wet towels, and you dry yourself off. You use a no-rinse shampoo to wash your hair, and after about a month of that, you can imagine what your hair is really like. So the first time you get back and you have a shower and wash your hair, it feels really, really good.
Maybe that's the kind of advantage of the male astronaut. They had a shorter hair, so but long hair, with a wet towel shampoo is really bad.
Well, I hope that we have entertained and inspired you tonight. It's a wonderful opportunity for us to bring to the public an event like this. We thank you all very, very much for coming. But first, I want to ask you to please give a very big hand to our two guests. Thank you. The host.